Hey brother! Ben, one of the great things about Pixar is how every little thing seems to have a story or a background to it, and Cars is full of them. Like the number 95 for Lightning, that's the year Toy Story came out. Chick Hicks number 86 is the year Pixar was founded, and Doc Hudson's license plate, 51HHMD, has got 3 of them. 51 being the year actual Hudson Hornets started being produced, HH standing for Hudson Hornet, and MD for Doc. But honestly, when it comes to Doc Hudson, that is just scratching the surface. He has an immense backstory, and I think uncovering it may give us the secret to how Lightning will be victorious in Cars 3. In case you need a little refresher, Doc Hudson in Cars is a retired racer. He won the Piston Cup in 51, 52, and 53, but then had a career-ending crash in 1954. After which, he was passed up for the next rookie in line, which sounds a lot like what is happening to many of the racers in Cars 3.
Jackson Storm is part of the next generation of high-tech racers.
Lightning in particular, we already know is going to take what looks to be a nearly career-ending crash probably very near the beginning of the movie. Now, Doc's is a sad story, but what's cool about it is that it's actually based on real-life events. Hudson Hornets were actually a real car, which began being produced in 1951, and they immediately began dominating the racetrack. A few different drivers drove Hudson Hornets, but Doc himself seems to be based on a man named Herb Thomas, whose Hornet was affectionately also called the Fabulous Hudson Hornet. And Thomas wasted no time reaching the top of his sport. In his first season in 1951, he won the entire championship. In 52, he came in second to another Hudson Hornet driver, but made up for it in 1953, where he yet again won. It's also probably worth noting that even though he didn't win outright in 52 and 54, he still won the most amount of races that year at 8 and 12 respectively. But after that, Thomas stopped driving Hudsons, and 2 years later would suffer a career-ending crash, similar to Doc. But Doc isn't the only homage to Thomas in Cars 3. In the trailers, we've seen Lightning return to one of Doc's old tracks, Thomasville Speedway. Now, there is no actual real-life Thomasville Speedway, so I'm thinking this is a nod to Herb Thomas as well. But it's not just the track itself, it's also the characters Lightning and crews meet there, aka the Legends. Allow me to introduce you to Smokey, River Scott, Louise Barnstormer Nash, and Junior Midnight Moon. And I'll be honest, I didn't think much of them when I first saw them in the trailer, but having done some research, I think these guys are going to be awesome. Let's start with Smokey. Smokey is based on a man named Smokey Yunick, who is one of the best, if not most infamous at times, crew chiefs in all of NASCAR history. After Yunick had established himself as one of the best mechanics around, he was recruited by a guy named Marshall Teague, who also drove Hudson Hornets, and his first job was to prepare a Hornet for Herb Thomas to drive. It won its first race. And there's no easy way to say this, but Smokey Yunick just thought differently than you do. Known for his signature white jumpsuit, cowboy hat, and pipe, he was known as the master of the gray area. And it's not hard to see why, because he was constantly finding loopholes in the rules and coming up with really creative ways to exploit them. For example, race cars can only have a certain size gas tank, but it doesn't say anything in the rules about the fuel line that feeds into the tank. So Smokey got himself a 3-meter long fuel line that was like 2 inches in diameter and installed that in his race cars, which allowed for an extra 5 gallons of fuel. He once built a car frame that lowered the roof but then also raised the floor so that it still fit on the tires appropriately, but effectively had built a 7/8 scale model of a regular race car, which was obviously a lot lighter. He once put an inflated basketball in the fuel tank so that when they filled it up for the test, it would be the appropriate volume, and then he would deflate it for the race so there'd be extra room. And I know some of that might just sound like cheating, but these are the kind of things that eventually shape the sport and make the rules what they are today. And other than that, he did have more genuine contributions to NASCAR as well. In any case, what it means for Cars 3 is that I bet that Smokey in his best dang garage in town, the real life garage was called Smokey's Best Damn Garage in Town, is going to have a handful of tricks like that are going to help Lightning overcome Jackson Storm. Next up for the Legends is River Scott. River Scott is also based on a retired actual NASCAR driver, Wendell Scott, who is famous for being the first African American and to date only only African American to win a NASCAR race at the premier level. As a boy, Wendell grew up basically as a speed junkie, constantly challenging other kids in his neighborhood to races on foot and bikes and skates, and he learned to be a really aggressive driver from his father. And this need for speed eventually led him to the lucrative but illegal business of moonshine running, where his job was literally to build cars that would go faster than the police, which made him a very natural fit for racing, but the color of his skin did not. He was literally refused by NASCAR just for being black. Joke's on them though, because he decided, whatever, I don't need you, I'm gonna race one level down on the Dixie circuit, where he won his first race in just 12 days. Pretty impressive if I do say so myself, and even though he won himself a lot of fans, he still faced a lot of aggression on and off the track. The point is, racing in the South like he did, nobody had greater odds to overcome than Wendell, and I'm betting River is very similar to that and will be able to sympathize with Lightning, who's also trying to overcome tremendous odds with the next generation of racers. Next up is Louise Barnstormer Nash. Modeled after a 1950s Nash ambassador, Louise is named after Louise Smith, aka the first lady of racing. And as you might be able to guess, she's famous for being the first woman to race at the top level of NASCAR. Well, tied, there was actually a second lady in that race as well, but they didn't go on to do as much. And although she never won a race at the premier level, she did win 38 races across her career in different formats, including models, modifieds, and sportsmen. I would imagine Nash is going to play a pretty similar role as River for Lightning, both of them having to have had to overcome the stigma of finding a way to win in a sport that just did not seem to want them around. And that brings me to maybe my favorite of these four, Junior Midnight Moon. Junior is actually being voiced by the real-life person he is representing, Junior Johnson. Like Wendell, Junior came from the world of moonshining, and right now you can literally go to the store and purchase legally some of his family's moonshine. I have tried it, it is not bad. In fact, once upon its time, his family got in some pretty serious trouble for their moonshine business, but got a, wait for it, presidential pardon from Ronald Reagan, which to me was like, what? But Johnson is a NASCAR icon. Within the sport, he is known as the last American hero and is credited as the first racer to ever utilize drafting. And this is the thing in Cars 3 that I think Junior Midnight Moon will be teaching Lightning, because he, above all the rest, will sympathize and understand what Lightning is up against. Because Junior in the movie is portrayed by a 39 Ford, and he, I'm betting like Lightning, is going to have been outpaced by a faster generation. But in a twist of events, his Jackson Storm will have been none other than Doc Hudson. Because the Hudson Hornets are just seriously no joke. They were so fast for their time. While making this video, I was actually astounded to find out that Ben and I's grandfather actually owned a Hudson Hornet. Here's some pictures. And according to him, he could get this thing up to 125 miles an hour, and that was in 1954. And that is moving. The fastest I have personally ever driven a car was 113 miles an hour in a BMW in 2007, and it felt like the car was going to explode. Actually, fun story, the engine of that car later did explode, which is why I own the car I do now. I say explode, it's a lot more impressive than what actually happened, which is some smoke started coming out and it just stopped moving. But it was on the highway. The point is, they told me it exploded, so that's what I'm saying. Anyway, sadly, Hudson Hornets were only ever produced for 4 years, despite literally being the fastest cars on the market and winning all of the races. Hudson just could not compete with post-World War II GM, Ford, and Chevy. Because of the big three, Hudson was forced to merge with the Nelson Kelvinator Corporation, which was actually the biggest corporate merge in US history at the time. Together, they became AMC and were later acquired by a company called Chrysler. But anyway, Ben, that is the truth about Doc Hudson and how I think his legacy will help Lightning get to victory in Cars 3. Ben, my question for you and everyone else is, what is the fastest you have ever driven or ridden in a car? Let me know in the towel section down below. Also, don't go try and set a record because I said that. These socks are amazing! Guys, thanks for watching this video. As always, please remember to like if you haven't already and subscribe so you don't miss any future Pixar videos from us. But big announcement, we actually just started a brand new Nuzlocke series over on the Super Carlin gaming channel. We're doing Pokemon Pearl. You can check that out right here. The first video uploaded yesterday, so you can get in right at the ground level. But otherwise, if you want to hear more about Cars and who you think the true villain of Cars 3 will be, you can check out this video right here. Ben, that's all I've got for you today, man. I will see you in the left.